On Silent Film Fridays, come learn about films before they could talk and stay for the observational humor. My name is Dr. Tiffany Knoll, and I'm an associate teaching professor with the Department of Popular Culture in the School of Cultural and Critical Studies at Bowling Green State University. I'm a cultural historian and early film expert, teaching in the world's first department dedicated to the study of popular culture. Silent Film Fridays is a streaming co-production with my daughter, Alex.
Hello.
Of ATK 42 Games. We feature silent films without the modern soundtracks and fill the silence with a combination of film studies, history, cultural studies, and the lessons of the sages Statler and Waldorf, and Joel Robinson and Mike Nelson.
It's Silent Film Fridays, where the films are silent, but the hosts are not. Broadcasting at twitch.tv/ATK42Games on Friday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern. Join us, won't you?
So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Genesis 1:27. And thus begins our biblical study with noted theologian Cecil B. DeMille. Hello everyone and welcome back to the lifeboat of the Golden Silent Films podcast. We're about to be stranded on the high seas for the duration of this episode, fighting for our very lives as we delve into our special shipwreck series here on the podcast. While we await hopefully a rescue, we're going to spend this time together talking about one of our favorite shipwreck films, Male and Female. Now before partaking in the idle chit-chat of rich and poor and various exchanges and power dynamics, let's talk about the usual Golden Silent Films podcast social media outlets. As usual, head on over to Golden Silence Cast on Instagram for up-to-date info on this little show. You can also find us on Bluesky at Golden Silence Cast. And also for all of you folks on X or Twitter, just follow at Golden Silence 1 or just search for Golden Silence Cast and we should pop up. All of those screen names and sites will be in the episode description in case you are interested in checking us out. We always would love to have you floating along with us, and at all of these social spaces, you're going to get behind-the-scenes pics and info, upcoming episode reveals, and other fun film-related materials. And always, 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 you're going to get cool photos of our land-loving podcats, Soda and Gizmo. Also, if you're listening to this program on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon Music, have your butlers, maids, or various servant crew leave reviews, ratings, or both. Our show has been around for over 5 years now, and we are only at 17 reviews on iTunes. We would always love to see that number keep growing, and you awesome silent film fans out there can make it happen. All of those ratings and reviews help the show so much. So, live your best review-leaving life, or order someone under you to do it for you, and help our show grow and reach fellow silent film fans. Dropping those reviews gives us more exposure in the world of podcasts and lets us know how we can improve. As always, we are grateful for all of the feedback and always want to bring you the best show humanly possible. And do subscribe to the Golden Silent Films podcast. While our output can be spotty, if you are subscribed, you will never miss an episode, and the moment new content drops, even if you're on a deserted island, it's going to go straight to your listening device of choice. We are smack dab in the middle of our 5th season and don't want you to miss a second. Now that we've covered the audio side of things, let's take a quick moment to remind you all out there of our presence on YouTube. We have started putting our episodes out there for your streaming pleasure. Whether you're catching new episodes or you want to relive past movie discussions, just search for Golden Silent Films Podcast and we will pop right up. Since we are sort of relatively new to YouTube, please do us a solid and click on over and like and subscribe. We hear it's what all the cool YouTubers are asking for, and if I remember correctly, also hit that notification bell. It's all about the engagement and the algorithms with this show, so we are old and often technically inept, so give us a little positive reinforcement and give our little channel a once-over. And thank you again for supporting us all so much. We're shooting to get 100 subscriptions in the calendar year of 2025, and you guys are really helping and really getting us up there, and we appreciate it so much. oddly enough, the world of silent cinema is also filled with silent shipwrecks. From our past deep dive into 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, we have been obsessed about talking about boat trips gone bad. This episode continues our, I guess you could call it an ongoing shipwreck series extravaganza. We here at the podcast love everything yacht related, from yacht rock to cocktails on the deck. We are here for it all. In our perfect dream world, life consists of super smooth sailing over clear blue water as the tunes of Christopher Cross soar all around us. But every once in a while, a wrecked boat and a Lord of the Flies-like battle for survival can ruin that smoothness. On top of the magic of yachting, this film also has several hooks that made it impossible for us to pass up. It stars Pittsburgher and movie megastar Thomas Meighan. This movie also features favorite of the show, Lile Lee, in one of her most charming roles that she ever did. And we haven't even gotten to the star power of Gloria Swanson in front of the cameras and Cecil B. DeMille behind it. This is a great movie with so much cool stuff going on with it, so let's not waste any time and get right to the sailing. But before we wreck our ship into a bunch of facts, backstory, and behind-the-scenes info, let's look at how best to watch this movie. So we're going to be watching this movie across several different media. First, for your physical media needs, we will be watching the 2014 Alpha Home Entertainment DVD release. Whilst this is a solid version, I do have a major complaint about this release. I can only assume the graphic designer of this DVD case and DVD artwork is from Cincinnati, Cleveland, and or Baltimore, because the name of Pittsburgh legend Thomas Meighan, the main star of the film, is nowhere to be found on the cover. It lists Gloria Swanson, Raymond Hatton, and Lile Lee, all perfectly willing and deserving to be on there, but nary a mention of Meighan. That's pretty messed up, so automatic point deduction for that alone. This is also an example of a movie that deserves a little more love than it gets. Now, there's a great box set out there that contains 7 or 8 great Fritz Lang silents. They're all restored with a bunch of bonus features looking at the works of that cinematic legend. There's one out there for Alfred Hitchcock, his silent films, all looking beautiful on Blu-ray with all kinds of bonus features and commentaries. And that just makes me wonder that, and think about, as I watch more and more Cecil B. DeMille silent films, the more I want some company out there to do that same thing, to do the right thing, and restore some of his early silent pictures. He's a pioneer whose work deserves to be better represented for the enjoyment of future audiences. His silent works are crucially important to the history of film, so please, someone out there, if you have the power, restore and re-release some of the classic Cecil B. DeMille silents. Now, before we get too heated and go off any more tangents, let's take a deep breath, focus, and discuss other ways to watch this great movie. As always, there is YouTube. There are so many options to watch male and female here. The ones I skimmed through all had pretty solid quality. In fact, some had a visual fidelity equal to and or greater than the previously mentioned DVD release. I also watched this in a colorized version on YouTube, though it was sans music. Regardless, YouTube is a great place to watch this film. Now, if you're still struggling to find a place to watch it, head on over to the male and female entry on Wikipedia. On that page, you will find the movie ready to be watched with a mere click of the mouse. This is a solid version in an easily accessible location, which is always a win for the world of silent film. In addition to that plethora of versions to watch this movie, let's talk about some of the other amazing resources that have contributed greatly to this episode. First, it's always awesome to get thoughts, stories, and experiences straight from the actress's mouth. Gloria Swanson wrote an incredible autobiography in 1987 called Swanson on Swanson, The Making of a Hollywood Legend, and we cannot recommend it enough. We hope as this episode goes on, you'll hear what Gloria Swanson writes and make a beeline to archive.org and give it a read for yourself. And best of all, it is free. It's a monster of a book, and this episode is only the tip of the iceberg. The other biography playing a huge part in this episode is entitled Cecil B. DeMille, A Life in Art, and was written by Simon Luvish. It was originally published in 2007 and certainly worth a read for any fan of DeMille or silent cinema. DeMille is a true artist, and exploring that in this great book is a win for silent film scholarship. Plus, he actually made a few movies after the silent era, which you might have heard of, and the book also talks about those. Now, speaking of wins for the art of silent film, let's talk about two of the people putting in amazing performances in male and female, and their connections to the legendary Cecil B. DeMille. Where better to start than with the life of the queen of the silver screen? The life of Gloria Swanson is worthy of an episode all of its own, so in an effort to try and keep this episode to a manageable length, which probably isn't going to happen anyway, we will be laser focused on a very specific time frame of the legendary actress's life. Considering the film we are talking about, it should be no surprise that we will be looking at the six-pack of film collaborations of Swanson and Cecil B. DeMille. Our story starts in 1918. The year had only just begun, and Gloria Swanson had already been seen in 3 features, all released in rapid succession. Before she could get started on a fourth, a phone call came from Oscar Goodstadt, the casting director at Famous Players Lasky. He was calling on behalf of one Cecil B. DeMille. He was summoning the young actress for a meeting that day. An excited Gloria took him up on the offer and made her way to his office at the studio located at Sunset and Vine. Upon arrival, the 18-year-old Swanson was caught off guard. Swanson would write, "Any notions I may have had of style or elegance evaporated the moment I was ushered into Mr. DeMille's paneled office. It was vast and somber, with tall stained glass windows and deep polar bear rugs. Light from the windows shone on ancient firearms and other weapons on the walls, and the elevated desk and chair resembled nothing so much as a throne. I felt like a peanut poised on teetering high heels." Swanson continues, "When he stood up behind the desk, he seemed to tower. Not yet 40, he seemed ageless, magisterial. He wore his baldness like an expensive hat, as if it were out of the question for him to have hair like other men. A sprig of laurel, maybe, but not ordinary hair. He was wearing gleaming boots and riding breeches that fit him like a glove. He came over and took my hand, led me to a large sofa and sat down beside me, and proceeded to look clear through me. He said that he had seen me in a little Senate picture and had never forgotten me, and that at that moment he was preparing a picture in which he wanted to use me. Getting down to brass tacks, DeMille began to talk contract status with the young actress. Unfortunately, lawyers from Triangle Film Corp would bring the wooing process to a stop. Even arbiters would rule against Famous Players Lasky. Swanson was stuck on a treadmill at Triangle, spinning her wheels as time ticked away. Those shackles would be off Swanson soon enough, as Triangle was facing business woes and bankruptcy. Triangle was willing to deal, and DeMille was in need of a replacement for a lead on his production of Don't Change Your Husband. Swanson would co-star here with Elliot Dexter in this picture. The February 3rd, 1919 edition of the New York Times would comment, "Cecil B. DeMille's Don't Change Your Husband at the Rialto this week has the finished workmanship recognizable in the DeMille productions, and Elliot Dexter, Gloria Swanson, and Lou Cody in the principal characters keep up their high standards." This change of scenery and director really had an impact on the acting style of Gloria Swanson. She would write, "Under Mr. DeMille, I began to see how telling small gestures and expressions could be if an actress knew how to control them, and I started to build up a whole bag of tricks with which I could heighten a moment or save a scene." Now, the craft of acting wasn't the only thing to change with Gloria Swanson. She had a positivity and excitement for acting that hadn't been in her life in quite some time. Now, the productions of Cecil B. DeMille provided an oasis that allowed her to max out to her fullest potential. Now, that first film with DeMille was only the beginning, as Swanson explains. After we finished Don't Change Your Husband, he, DeMille, gave me a contract to look over. I was almost too excited to read a word for fear the charmed moment would end and he would change his mind. I would have signed anything just to be able to work with him forever. We signed it on December 30th, 1918, just Mr. DeMille and I. The next film to be released by the dynamic duo would be 1919's For Better, For Worse. This was shot at the tail end of January to late March of 1919, releasing on April 27th. This one suffered a bit at the hands and pens of critics. Variety would write, "It is a most unsatisfactory tale, and the conclusion cannot be anything but distasteful." While still conceding, it was admirably produced by DeMille and hence interesting. According to biographer Simon Luvish, DeMille was aware that this project might not be to everybody's taste, and even before the film's shoot had his eye on another, quite different vehicle for Gloria, much more in keeping with the flighty wife of Don't Change Your Husband. Jesse Lasky had acquired the film rights to The Admirable Crichton in the 1902 play by J.M. Barrie. This, both Lasky and DeMille determined, was to be their big production of the first post-war year. The base story of The Admirable Crichton would be titled Male and Female and star Gloria Swanson opposite Thomas Meighan. This film would be released on November 23, 1919. Spoiler alert, we have a lot of behind-the-scenes info on this picture coming up, but for now, let's talk about the experience for Gloria on this set. Remember, up to this point, Swanson had been the epitome of glamour and beauty. This filming experience was a whole new world. The actress writes, "The weeks on the island were harsh and exhausting for people who customarily worked on luxurious sets and designer clothes, but by the second week we were all strangely happy and alert and in touch with one another. We behaved as I had never known a bunch of movie people to behave. We seemed to be in the crucible of excitement and tenderness. All of it Mr. DeMille's doing, we knew." This production would prove to be a huge undertaking in these early days of the cinema industry, and Cecil B. DeMille was the perfect person to push the industry forward. He was a visionary with big ideas, and there was no obstacle big enough to stop him or even slow him down. Swanson could see this ambition, and it was one of the reasons she respected him so very much. "I could tell from the first day that this film was a major challenge for Mr. DeMille," Swanson would write, "and all of us gave every ounce of our energy every minute to make it important and special. We could feel a new kind of excitement in our work, and we wondered, each of us secretly, if we might not be making something way beyond what could be thought of as just another picture." Swanson continues, "It was a great story by one of the world's major playwrights, and I could sense that it was making Mr. DeMille reach higher and conceive on a grander scale than he had ever done before." Now, a seven-reeler entitled Why Change Your Wife would be the follow-up and the fourth time DeMille directed Swanson. This film was released on April 24, 1920. Director-actress wasn't the only repeat pairing this film had for moviegoers. Gloria Swanson played Beth Gordon opposite Thomas Meighan as her husband Robert Gordon. The character Swanson played in these DeMille films would make her an icon to free-thinking women around the world. The New York Times would write, "Such DeMille films as Don't Change Your Husband and Why Change Your Wife established her as the worldly woman who leads her own life. The movies, daring in the early 20s for their sophisticated views concerning marital infidelity, were decried by some reviewers as artificial and soulless, but they made DeMille a trendsetter and the actress an idol." This run of DeMille pictures really put Gloria Swanson's name on the map. She was quickly becoming part of the zeitgeist, with the average moviegoer curious about all aspects of her life. Her articles, interviews, and stories in various magazines and papers were devoured by the public. She had moved way past the quiet private life and into the zaniness of the Hollywood notoriety. She would recall in her autobiography, "After playing roles in these DeMille pictures, I was becoming a public property. Newspapers all over the country asked for exclusive interviews, so in addition to watching rushes during the lunch period, I often had to talk to reporters who outdid one another in thinking up trivial things to ask me. They wanted to know whether I liked tall men or short men, how often I ate dessert, what my favorite breed of dog was, if I dyed my hair, what my favorite color was, if I got depressed on rainy days, what my favorite flower was, if I considered myself stuck up, if I thought so-and-so was a nice dresser, if I ever obeyed silly impulses. By the time I thought I had finally talked to the last columnist in America, the first one was back at the dressing room door with more questions. I know me personally would hate having to answer the question of how often I ate dessert. It is not a particularly good or healthy answer, I'll leave it at that. Now, speaking of autobiographies, in DeMille's autobiography, he goes into some detail concerning that special something he saw in Gloria Swanson. The two of them were the perfect union of collaborators that lifted each other up. They really did bring out the best in each other. DeMille would write, "Many actors who can be magnificently hateful villains always want to play Little Bo Peep, but Gloria Swanson suffered no such illusions. I never told her until after our first few successes under my direction why I was handling her career in a certain way, but she was intelligent enough to know and patient enough to wait." The director continues, "Nothing was spared to bring out all the glamour that was Gloria, but I did not star her. She received the same billing as any other member of the cast. She also received and was contented with a relatively small salary. The public, not I, made Gloria Swanson a star." The penultimate cinematic release for the duo would be Something to Think About, which was released on October 17, 1920. A number of various production plans and ideas all had crossed the desk and mind of DeMille, though none really, I guess you could say, set his soul on fire. That was until the choice was made to film Something to Think About. This was an original story co-written with Jeannie McPherson. It also has the distinction of being DeMille's first overtly religious film. Though set in contemporary America, this film would be photographed by DeMille regular Alvin Wyckoff, who shared a credit with Carl Struess, whom we have talked about in depth in previous episodes. This film was also a reunion of Swanson and Elliot Dexter. The two were incredibly happy to be co-stars again, especially under the direction of DeMille. As positive as they were about their company, the script was a bit of another story. According to Swanson, neither she nor Dexter were particularly enamored with what the script offered. And they weren't the only ones who felt the story was a bit of a letdown. The Times would write, "Praise and blame for the authorship of the story must go to Jeannie McPherson." Now, that's a bit rough for McPherson, who is usually a strong point for any movie in which she is attached. Well, she's a strong point on the written side, at least. It's her interpersonal skills that could use a little work, but we will get to that in due time. The final team-up of the two Hollywood heavyweights came in 1921, just as Swanson's contract was coming up. This picture would not be without its struggles and hardships. First, this would be Gloria Swanson's first picture post-childbirth. The arrival of little Gloria into this world would overwhelm her mother with ecstasy in the moment. The life of Gloria Swanson, both personally and professionally, was about to change forever. And, as is always the case, just when you think you're out, they drag you back in. In this case, the they is Cecil B. DeMille. Swanson recalls her first visit from DeMille post-birthing. She writes, "Mr. DeMille came to visit me about a week later. He brought the baby a tiny string of real pearls with a diamond clasp, and I thanked him profusely. 'Don't thank me,' he said, 'until you hear the favor I've come to ask.' 'All right,' I said, 'ask.' 'Your starring contract begins in January,' he said. 'I was wondering if you would consider, before you start out on your own, making one last picture for me.' 'Oh, Mr. DeMille,' I said, 'you know I'd rather do that than anything.' 'Good,' he said with a huge smile. 'I'll call you when I'm ready to start.' At this point, Swanson's star was super bright, and her name on a contract brought loads of money. To do one more film with DeMille at cut-rate pricing was a big deal. This would cause trouble and strife at home, but ultimately serve as a perfect example of the love and respect Swanson and DeMille had for each other. She felt she owed everything she had to the auteur, and was more than willing to pay it back when he came calling. The Affairs of Anatole was released on September 25, 1921, starring Swanson opposite Wallace Reid. Like the admirable Crichton before it, this was also based on a stage play. The screenplay was based on a one-act play called Anatole and was written by Arthur Schnitzler in 1893. The play opened in New York City on October 14, 1912, with John Barrymore in the title role, and ran for 72 performances. The film version was in production from November 1920 until January of 1921. This was roughly 6 weeks after Swanson had given birth, and despite her best intentions, the filming of this movie was hard and certainly took its physical toll on Swanson. What she thought would be a lovely swan song with DeMille turned out to be anything but lovely. Swanson recalls, "It turned out instead to be torture. First of all, shooting began before I really felt up to it. I was worried that my figure wasn't quite back to normal, but more than that, I had been torn rather badly during the final stages of labor. The doctor said if I didn't take time to rest and heal, I might have trouble later. In fact, he wanted me to go to the hospital without delay for corrective surgery, but I refused. A promise to Mr. DeMille was for me a sacred promise." There was a whole host of reasons this was an ordeal for Gloria Swanson. Her premature return to work wasn't the only off-putting thing of this production. Despite her body failing her in the moment, she also had to deal with some unsavory elements on set as well, all from a number of sources. A lot of this interpersonal yuckiness came from her co-star Wallace Reid, who had his own issues at the time. Swanson would recall, "Wallace Reid, the male star, was a cause of constant anxiety to me. I heard endless rumors that he was an addict, and although I never saw him take drugs, his behavior never seemed quite right during Anatole. He was forever offering me rides, and once sent his valet to my dressing room to ask for a photograph of me. I always found ways to refuse him politely, but he gave me the jitters. Gloria Swanson throughout her career was never too fond of interviews and various public relations events. They were tiring and rarely asked anything deep or thought-provoking. The public relations department of this film really pushed the actress to her tipping point. It's one thing to answer inane questions, but when the health of her daughter started being the focal point, well, that was a step too far. During the filming, the PR department was always pestering Swanson to bring her newborn to the studio for photo sessions and interviews. Gloria pushed back and denied their requests time after time. She hated the exploitative nature of the whole thing and wanted no part of it. The real reason they wanted pics of the baby was way worse than you could imagine. The new mother would explain, "The publicity people confessed to me that the studio was pestering them because they wanted to squelch rumors that my baby was deformed or retarded. Otherwise, reporters had asked, why should I be so protective of her? I told them she was perfectly gorgeous, but that they would have to take my word for it because they would never see her after that, and then I ordered them out. Instantly, word spread that I had become cross and irritable since my confinement." Stories like that are so disheartening to hear. The fact that, celebrity or not, a mother has to defend her mothering to idiot journalists is beyond ridiculous. And it definitely has roots in her being a woman, no doubt. The press, journalism, and celebrity culture have always been a terrible combination, probably since cave walls were painted on. And there will continue to be a toxic relationship long after we are gone. It really is sad, and I feel horrible 100 years after the fact that Gloria Swanson and her daughter had to deal with all of that back then. Unfortunately, the unpleasantness and crappy behavior wouldn't be confined strictly to her co-stars and publicity agents. Scenarist and writer Jeannie McPherson would contribute her fair share of, HR department complaint-worthy behavior to this production as well. The filming of Anatole seemed so tough on Gloria Swanson to an outside observer looking in, and it especially stings considering in what high regard she held her work with DeMille. Back to Jeannie McPherson and her contributions to, according to Gloria Swanson, a fairly toxic film set. While this example will be hard to hear, it also perfectly exemplifies the relationship between Swanson and DeMille. Swanson walks us through the final indignity suffered on the set of The Affairs of Anatole when she writes, "The straw that broke the camel's back was a remark of Jeannie McPherson's. She was a powerful figure in DeMille's creative world and, according to gossip columnists, in his personal world as well. She had no husband or children and had always been jealous of my relationship with Mr. DeMille. As a scenarist, she had no business whatever in the wardrobe department, but during Anatole, she seemed to make a point of standing around for all of my fittings. It annoyed and embarrassed me, but I said nothing, until one day in front of everyone she said with a cutting edge, 'Goodness me, but you do stay on the plump side, don't you, Gloria?' 'You'd be plump, too, if you were nursing a baby,' Swanson fired back before stomping out of the dressing room." Swanson picks up the story. "I went straight to Mr. DeMille and asked him if I looked all right. He said, of course. 'Well, Miss McPherson doesn't seem to think so,' I said, and I could feel my lip trembling. He came over and put his hands on my shoulders. 'That's because you're a star, young fellow, and Miss McPherson isn't,' he said. 'As a star, you have to learn to hear what you want to hear, ignore what you have to ignore. You have to learn to take the cream and leave the milk. Always remember that.' Whatever the Affairs of Anatole cost me, that moment more than made up for it," Swanson would say. Despite all the pain, both physical and mental, suffered by Gloria Swanson while making this picture, it turned out to be quite a commercial success. Cecil B. DeMille's next picture, The Affairs of Anatole, is to be an all-star production. You have seen other all-star productions, 'tis true, but never anything so wonderful as this will be. All of its players graduated to individual stardom under the magic touch of DeMille, and I cannot imagine a greater treat than to see them all together," writes Hazel Simpson Naylor in the February 1921 edition of Motion Picture Magazine. According to the American Film Institute website, this film was a big deal to theatergoers. The article reads, "Upon its general release, The Affairs of Anatole maintained its early box office success, setting ticket sales records at the Rialto and Rivoli theaters in New York City, as announced in the October 1st, 1921 Motion Picture News. It marked the first time the picture was released simultaneously in both theaters and sold 10,166 tickets at the Rialto and 9,959 at the Rivoli on opening day alone. The Affairs of Anatole was scheduled to run for 2 weeks at both venues and was expected to be viewed by over 200,000 New Yorkers, 3% of the city's population at the time. Let's float on now from the successes of Gloria Swanson with the closing quote from Cecil B. DeMille. All good things, of course, must come to an end, and so this brilliant tag team did as well. From sheer star power to financial concerns and general personal growth, Swanson would move on from the purview of the director who made her a household name. It was bittersweet, to be sure, but DeMille appreciated all they had done together when he said, "When the time came, I said to her, 'Now, young fellow, go and be a star. You don't need me anymore.' But Gloria chose to remain under my direction for 6 pictures in all, before going on to become the reigning queen of the movies." The other lead in this picture is a Pittsburgh legend and icon. Well, at least to all of us here at the Golden Silent Films podcast, he is. Thomas Meighan was once one of the biggest stars of the silent era, though today many folks, Pittsburghers included, have no idea how bright this man's star really was. In the interest of time, we have decided against a full biography of Meighan in this episode. So much time was spent dissecting the Gloria Swanson-Cecil B. DeMille relationship that a full, deep look at the life of the Pittsburgh-born star would be too much in what is probably going to be a pretty long episode in and of itself. To that end, we will be copying our own work here and looking at the Thomas Meighan's works with DeMille. Now, let me clarify that a bit. The Cecil B. films will be our focus. Meighan has also appeared in a number of William C. DeMille-directed pictures, but those are a story for another episode. Speaking of stories for other days and other episodes, let's talk about the life of Thomas Meighan. We will totally be getting into that in later episodes of the podcast. In fact, we have some cool Pittsburgh-based stuff coming up, and the milieu of Meighan will be a big part of that. For now, though, let's look at Meighan and DeMille, Cecil B. We can start out by saying the relationship Meighan had with Cecil B. DeMille was quite different than that of Swanson. While Swanson was a muse, Meighan was a solid, reliable talent DeMille trusted fully. That is by no means selling the talented Meighan short. He was someone DeMille knew was ready for any responsibility given to him. The proof is in the number of times Meighan played pivotal roles for Cecil, and William too for that matter. Meighan was a pro's pro in the burgeoning film industry. Much like Gloria Swanson, Meighan would appear in, as far as I counted, 5 productions with Cecil B. DeMille over a span of 7 years. Kindling was a feature in which things were really clicking on all cylinders for Cecil B. DeMille. In fact, it was so smooth that the picture was filmed in only 17 days. A lot of things were working out for the best. Included in that spat of great fortune was DeMille finding a leading man. DeMille, in his autobiography, would write, "It was my first picture with a young man who had only recently matriculated in the Lasky School by making his first motion picture appearance in The Fighting Hope, directed by George Medford. But his ruggedly handsome and expressive face was well known on Broadway, and we shall meet him again in other bigger pictures. His name was Thomas Meighan." Kindling was written, produced, and directed by Cecil B. DeMille in 1915. It was based on a Broadway play by Charles A. Kenyon. As far as I could find, this looks to be, I think, Thomas Meighan's 2nd or 3rd film overall. It was a 5-reeler which starred Meighan as Honest Heine Schultz. It would see its theatrical release on July 12, 1915. The Trail of the Lonesome Pine, released on February 13, 1916, would be the next time Meighan starred in a DeMille picture. It was based on the 1908 novel by John Fox Jr. and the 1912 Broadway play of the same name by Eugene Walter. Charlotte Walker would make the transition from stage to screen in reprising her role from the Broadway production. In this film, Meighan played Jack Hale opposite Charlotte Walker's June Tolliver. Today, complete 35mm prints of the Trail of the Lonesome Pine are held by the Library of Congress and the George Eastman Museum in Rochester, New York. Next up for Meighan would be today's feature presentation, 1919's Male and Female. Despite eventually playing the lead and quasi-title role, Thomas Meighan wasn't always the first choice to play the admirable Crichton on the big screen. Now, of course, thinking of that role played by anyone but Meighan is unfathomable. Back then, however, it was originally going to be portrayed by another DeMille regular. DeMille would write, "Originally, we had planned to cast Elliot Dexter as Crichton, the admirable butler, but he became seriously ill, thus giving Thomas Meighan the opportunity for one of his most successful roles, and also for what must have been one of his most unforgettable adventures. Meighan's fourth production with Cecil B. DeMille would come in 1920 with the film Why Change Your Wife? In this picture, Meighan starred as a husband in need of a wife with a little more pizzazz, and a wife more interested in wearing suggestive lingerie. His frumpy first wife is played by Gloria Swanson, while his fashionable pro-lingerie-wearing wife is played by Bebe Daniels. If you have never seen Why Change Your Wife, I highly recommend zipping on over to YouTube and giving it a spin. It's a fun film that really shows off the chemistry between Meighan and Gloria Swanson. In this film, they are an unhappily married couple, which eventually leads to Meighan's character going astray, leading to divorce. Then it's a battle of one-upsmanship between the two leading actors and actresses to some fun little scenes. Eventually, we find out Meighan's character should just never be married. Thomas Meighan, DeMille would write, was the husband shuttled between the two, Swanson and Daniels, rather helplessly it might seem. But I dare say it did not occur to the men in the audience to pity him for being fought over by Gloria Swanson and Bebe Daniels. His fifth and final role in a DeMille film came in a movie called Manslaughter. This film, released on September 24, 1922, was written by the aforementioned Jeannie McPherson and was based on a novel by Alice Duer Miller. It was a tale of an irresponsible, speed-crazy girl sent to prison by the district attorney who loved her. Sounds chock full of drama, right? Leatrice Joy was the speed demon opposite Thomas Meighan. While the Meighan and DeMille combo was usually money, it didn't seem to extend here in Manslaughter, where Meighan played O'Bannon. Simon Luvish would explain, DeMille cast Leatrice Joy as Lydia and returned to an old hand, Thomas Meighan, for the upright O'Bannon. It is true that the directorial hand seems off the tiller here, for Meighan performs with an unusual stiffness, like a clothes horse for uplifting ideas. The New York Times on September 18, 1922 would chime in on Manslaughter when they wrote, "It is a decidedly good picture, although parts of it have been considerably exaggerated to make a director's holiday." According to DeMille himself, there was one particularly harsh critic of the film that really stood out. This is a bit of a tangent, but it's a funny side story that DeMille tells, and who knows when, if ever, we're going to talk about Manslaughter again. So let's talk about it a little. DeMille writes, "Manslaughter was a success with everyone who saw it. I believe, except for one lady who marched up to the box office and demanded her money back. The exhibitor, surprised at this reaction to a picture which was playing well, asked the lady why. 'False pretenses, that's why,' she said. 'You advertise a picture called Man's Laughter, and I certainly didn't find anything to laugh at in this one.'" And with that would be the end of Meighan and DeMille working together. Thomas Meighan, unfortunately, would pass away on July 8, 1936, at the incredibly young age of 57. After 2 years of fighting, the actor would finally lose his battle to throat cancer. It's a real shame, as Meighan only had a scant few roles in the sound era, and those few were only a fraction of what could have been had he not had near-constant health struggles. It would have been super cool to see and hear Thomas Meighan in Cecil B. DeMille talkies, for sure. Up to this point so far in the episode, you've heard a lot of examples of stage productions being made into films. This film, Male and Female, is another example of stage works being remade for the silver screen. In this era of filmmaking, getting ideas from well-known plays and literary works was common practice. What wasn't common practice was getting stories from legendary writers like one J.M. Barrie, who you may know from Peter Pan fame. Barrie was no one-trick pony, that's for sure. Sir James Matthew Barrie was born on May 9, 1860, in Scotland. I would try to say his birth town, but that would not end well, and with my usual deficit in proper pronunciation. Barrie's writing career would start at the University of Edinburgh, where he wrote drama reviews for the Edinburgh Evening Courant. He graduated with an M.A. on April 21, 1882. After answering an ad for a job, he would work for a year and a half as a staff journalist on the Nottingham Journal. I can definitely appreciate that path in life. I majored in professional writing in college and did movie reviews amongst other journalism for the school paper. While we share a similar early path, I kind of have a feeling his works will stand the test of time and result in a few more film adaptations than any episode of this podcast. But we both, in the long run, ended up with creative endeavors we both enjoy. Once Barrie moved on from journalism, he would turn his creativity towards being a novelist and playwright. His career was prolific and often overshadowed by The Boy Who Never Aged. It was in London that he would be inspired to write the stories that would eventually become Peter Pan. In an effort to buck the trend and put a spotlight on a non-Pan play, let's move past those Neverland adventures and delve into his other works with a focus on the story that would be the basis for 1919's Male and Female that we're about to talk about. Outside of his Pan-centric works featuring Tinker Bell, Captain Hook, and others, Barrie offered so much creativity and great stories to keep crowds constantly entertained. Between 1887 and 1936, Barrie's pen would produce over 50 works for stage and book. Unfortunately, none of his works attained the worldwide high-flying status of Peter Pan. And that, folks, brings us to the Admirable Crichton, the basis of the movie we will be featuring today. J.M. Barrie wrote The Admirable Crichton in 1902 and premiered it in London on November 4th, 1902, and it was an instant success, running for a staggering 828 performances and starring H.B. Irving as Crichton and Irene Van Brugh as Lady Mary Lazenby. A November 5th, 1902 issue of the New York Times would provide a review of this first run of the British play. It reads, "Perhaps, says the Times, the play takes a little too long in telling, but is as delightful a piece as the English stage has produced in our generation, always fresh and exhilarating. It was enthusiastically received." So, obviously, the natural next move was to stage an American production. Stateside, the production under the supervision of Charles Frohman was prepared for 1903. Frohman and Barrie agreed that actor William Gillette would be a great fit as the titular Crichton, with Sybil Carlyle as Lady Mary. The play was first run in New York's New Lyceum Theatre, and it was a huge hit, much like its counterpart was back in merry old England. A review in the October 27, 1904 edition of the Boston Evening Transcript reads, "Opening the New Lyceum Theatre in New York, the play and star were so enthusiastically received that they continued to fill the playhouse at every performance during the entire season without interruption." That, folks, says a heck of a lot about the quality of this story and why film companies and producers saw so much potential in it. Now that we've talked a little bit about this play's author and a bit about the history of the production of this story, let's talk about how The Admirable Crichton has quite the storied history in the world of filmed adaptations. In 1918, 1 year before Male and Female hit the screens, G.B. Samuelson directed the first silent adaptation. It starred Basil Gill, Mary Dibley, and Lillian Hall Davis. It was the DeMille production of Male and Female that would prove pivotal for the up-and-coming director. Turning to the always awesome Movie Silently website, we read, "Male and Female was the play's big Hollywood adaptation, and it's significant because it proved to be the blueprint for Cecil B. DeMille's career, at least for the next few years. Splendor and opulence filtered through extreme eccentricity, elaborate bathroom scenes, historical flashbacks, epic scenes, and plenty of sexiness on display." And DeMille knew this story had the potential to be a big hit with audiences. So much so that he sought it out. He wanted the rights to turn this play into a motion picture and knew exactly who to turn to. In his autobiography, DeMille explains, "I asked Jesse Lasky to try to obtain for me the motion picture rights to a work by one of the most eminent playwrights in the English-speaking theater, Sir James M. Barrie's The Admirable Crichton. This was a bold venture, especially since none of us knew Barrie, and the negotiations had to be conducted by cable between New York and England. How would the celebrated master of gentle and fragile whimsy feel about turning one of his most successful plays over to a group of probably brash and brassy American movie makers?" Sir James was willing, however. Gloria Swanson, who we've talked about a little bit earlier, was an actress whose stock was on the rise at this point in time and required a most admirable co-star to play the lead butler. Simon Luvish provides the bona fides of Pittsburgh legend Thomas Meighan. The Yinzer was a bit of a late replacement for an ill Elliot Dexter, whom Luvish writes. To play opposite her, Cecil cast Thomas Meighan, described by Photoplay as homely as manly beauty goes, but endowed with the quality to get it over. In 1915, he had been the stolid Heine Schultz in DeMille's Kindling, but by 1919 he had played opposite Mary Pickford in Normal Talmadge and had accumulated a female fan base sufficient for him to progress from leading man to star. The December 17, 1919 issue of Photoplay magazine also chimes in with a comparison between play and film. The article reads, Sir James's play has twice been timely. When it was written, a great occasion for sneering at snobbery, and now, when class bickering and class leveling seem to be going on the world over. With the departures and liberties which the photoplay always affords the converted stage medium, the present version, in all its expansion, is quite faithful to Barrie's incidents and, as far as I can see, wholly faithful to Barrie's spirit. Something less faithful to the original play, though, is the title. As soon as the deal closed, DeMille wasted no time in bringing on Jeannie McPherson to write. Another quick decision was renaming the film Male and Female. Why, though, would someone be so quick to switch names? Spoiler alert, folks, I hate the title of Male and Female. But DeMille had his reasons, and who am I, just a podcast guy, who am I to argue with such cinematic genius? DeMille recounts, I had taken alarm when both a letter and a telegram from Jessie Lasky referred to the play as Admiral Crichton. I knew that, of course, Jessie had not made this mistake, but I said to myself that if Jessie's experienced secretary and the Postal Telegraph Company could make it, the public certainly would too. They would think the picture was about some unheard-of naval officer, probably quote-unquote war stuff or costume stuff, or anything but what it was. Now, that charming base story has also been part of several adaptations in film productions all over the world. In France, the 1933 film Charlemagne was loosely based on the General Crichton storyline. A year later, an American production starring Bing Crosby called We're Not Dressing was released. In 1936, a Chinese production called Back to Nature was released and followed the now familiar plot. And that, folks, is just the cinematic treatments. There have been television adaptations, radio plays, all released throughout the years, all tracing their lineage back to the timeless nature of this popular story. So with that boatload of biographical information shoved out to sea, let's start the movie breakdown proper. Now, this Cecil B. DeMille production is brought to us by Jessie L. Lasky. It is Male and Female, written by Jeannie McPherson, based on the Admirable Crichton by J.M. Barrie. In case you were unaware, this isn't any old production. This is, to be quoted, this is a famous Players Lasky super production. Pretty fancy if I do say so myself. Filming began on June 15th, 1919, with the production wrapping up on July 30th of the same year. In light of its status as a super production, Male and Female was a 9-reel feature coming in at 8,952 feet of film. The cost of the picture was $168,619.28. This picture was photographed by Alvin Wyckoff with art direction by Wilfred Buckland. Howard Higgins served as the production manager while Anne Bouchins handled the editing duties. We talked earlier about this film's change in title. We understand now why the change was made, but what about Male and Female really caught the fancy of Cecil B. DeMille? Let's hear from the man himself. DeMille writes, we first thought of changing the title to The Spell, but I had settled upon Male and Female as best expressing the elemental situation of the story, when the primitive necessities of life on a desert island knocked out the class distinctions between lords and butlers, ladies and maids, and left them all merely men and women. The film proper starts with some idyllic shots of ocean waves and other nature scenery before getting biblical on us, saying, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Fresh from Genesis 1:27. I've read that a million times now and still can't make any literal sense of this. I guess it's my heathenness, I suppose, but I get the gist. God created man, God created women. Let's go with the movie. Like any good silent film, though, we begin with the introduction of Lile Lee as Tweenie, filling her own little niche in this divine creation amongst the tangled destinies of fashionable Loamhouse London lives Tweenie, a little scullery maid. We love Lile Lee around here. She is so darn great in every role she takes on, and this role is no different. This is already going to be a crazy long episode, so we will forego the bio for Lila this time around. If you want to learn more about her, though, zip on back to our Blood and Sand episode. Without revealing too much, for future episodes, we have some great Lile Lee content coming up later in the year and later in 2025, and you will not want to miss any of it, I promise you that. Now, this opening bit is fun and really sets the mood for life in the Earl of Loam's house. We see Tweenie has some affection for our Crichton. Also, amongst all this, we get introductions to the Loam family by seeing the house butlers and maids waiting on them. The first person we're introduced is to the Earl of Loam, played by Theodore Roberts. Since the film is introducing him, let's do the same. Lord Loam, patriarch of the Loam household, is played by Theodore Roberts. Roberts was born on October 8, 1861 in San Francisco, California. He got his start in acting for the stage in 1880, only to give it up, oddly enough, to command a schooner owned by his father. By the 1890s, he was back on stage before eventually taking his thespianism to the screen. A common thread throughout this film is that Cecil B. DeMille had a cast of regulars, people he saw value in working with over and over and over and over again. Roberts was one of those folks. Looking through his filmography, you'll see the name Cecil B. DeMille everywhere, from early deep cuts to classics like Joan the Woman in 1923's The Ten Commandments. To follow his career is to follow that of Cecil B. Unfortunately, he would not live to see the era of sound on film. He passed away on December 12, 1928, at the age of 67 in Hollywood, California. Next up on our rich people roll call was the Honorable Ernest Woolley, a cousin to Lord Loam. We discover Woolley pays fabulous sums in restaurants yearly for the privilege of handing his hat to an attendant. He is played, coincidentally, by Raymond Hatton. He is followed by Lady Agatha Lazenby, the youngest daughter of Lord Loam, whom the film explains is to find, like most beauties, that the condition of her face is less important than to learn to face conditions. A little foreshadowing, perhaps. Agatha here is played by Mildred Reardon. That, folks, leads us to Mary Lazenby, Lady Mary Lazenby, eldest daughter of Lord Loam. The film explains Mary is to learn that hands are not only to be manicured, but to work with. Heads not only to be dressed, but to think with. Hearts are not only to beat, but to love with. And she is portrayed by the incomparable Gloria Swanson. A December 17, 1919 issue of Photoplay magazine would describe this Swanson role thusly. As Lady Mary, she conveys perfectly the hauteur, the splendor, and the almost decadent lure and luxury of a person of her class. In the moments where the soul of a woman is almost but not quite born in this tigerish and silken body, Miss Swanson does not particularly impress. But at all times she is assuredly an eyeful, and an eyeful was about all that Lady Mary could have amounted to in reality. All of these intros really show in a comedic way what wusses and entitled rich folk the Loam family really are, and will no doubt play a part as things take more serious turn as the film progresses. All these introductions, all this build-up brings us to the admirable Crichton himself, Mr. Thomas Meighan, the lead butler of the Loam household. A Mr. Belvedere for the 20s, if you will, which is a great and underrated show and has great Pittsburgh connections. We will see that Crichton and Belvedere share some characteristics as this film progresses. Now that we've been properly introduced to the gang, what a lineup, right? Banger after banger after banger. Not a weak spot in the bunch. Photoplay magazine would write, one could write a glossary of complimentary things and use a battery of adjectives without overdoing the description of these various appearances. With a cast which looks like a page from the picture Who's Who, and with all the strategy of sunshine which his experience and resources could command, Mr. DeMille has compounded a fabric upon which adventure is mildly imposed upon a main base of luxury, beauty, and supreme sensuousness. Now the next scene is Cecil B. DeMille in a nutshell. Taking something as simple as a rich woman taking a bath and raising it up to epic levels. From the decor to the actual bathing itself, DeMille knows how to make bath time something special and extravagant. And in honor of that opulence, let's examine the bathing scene in way more detail than you could have ever anticipated. Even from the inner title, we know we are in for a bathing treat. It reads, "Humanity is assuredly growing cleaner, but is it growing more artistic? Women bathe more often, but not as beautifully as their ancient sisters. Why shouldn't the bathroom express as much art and beauty as the drawing room?" A fair question indeed, I say. This scene gains nothing from my explanation. From the numerous maids assisting to the setup and appearance of the bath and the liberal use of rose water in Mary's bath, this is a scene that needs to be seen to be appreciated. In directing this scene, DeMille knew how to get the most out of Gloria Swanson. As she bathed, DeMille cried out, "Prolong it, relish the smell of the rose water, more rapture. Make the fans feel like they are going down with you." Needless to say, we see here how the other half gets clean. Since our conversation has gone bath-centric, let's continue that. Let's take it a bit further. If you look up the word trendsetter in the dictionary, you will find a picture of Gloria Swanson, and her run of DeMille pictures only reinforced that to the public. And her influence wasn't confined to fashion either. According to biographers Richard Hudson and Raymond Lee in their book Gloria Swanson, we read, "It was during this period, the DeMille era, that critics tagged Swanson as a clothes horse. Everything she would do in one of DeMille's dramas was copied. Hair, hats, gowns of all description. And when the immortal director dunked her in the famous male and female bathtub scene, the plumbers of the land cheered her. Never had there been such a run on sunken and marbled immersers." Needless to say, that bathroom scene was a big deal. Even before the risque scene played out on movie screens across the country, it was quite the event during filming. According to authors Gabe Esso and Raymond Lee in their book DeMille, The Man and His Pictures, we read, "When Cecil B went into production in mid-1919 on that history-making bath scene, it was the first time that security guards had been placed around a Hollywood set. Everyone not performing a vital function was barred from stage. After all, it had taken DeMille several days to convince the 20-year-old budding actress to go through with it, and he didn't want any curious staring to make her feel ill at ease." Now, this scene would become a meta-inspiration for DeMille himself. He liked how this bathing scene turned out so much that it inspired him to keep on doing it, and doing it, and doing it. Movie after movie going forward, female characters would get this mandatory bathtub scene. Esso and Lee write, "From then on, whatever the story of a DeMille film of the 20s, there came an obligatory halt in the plot for a lingering scene in which the heroine, sometimes the hero, washed and anointed herself in preparation for a gay masquerade ball, or perhaps some less public pleasure." Now, leaving the bathroom for a little bit and heading back to the film, we also get a hint that times and the story is a-changin'. If anyone had told the great lady and the little scullery maid of Loam House that their destinies were to be inseparably bound together, each would have opened her eyes and laughed, the movie tells us. We next get some fun character moments between Tweenie and Crichton over breakfast. Crichton shows Tweenie how to be more civil and polite when it comes to eating toast. The charm and naivete that Lile Lee brings to Tweenie is really great here, and her chemistry with Meighan is picture perfect. Lile Lee was a master of being more than mere love interest or tacked on character. She brings a charm and depth to every role she takes. Now, because we can't leave the bathroom, we head back to see Mary now taking a post-bath shower and being read a letter from a suitor, Lord Brocklehurst. It reads, "My Lady of the Roses, I am coming over this morning to show you something interesting for the slim third finger of your slim white hand." Hopefully you heard that with a sniveling wussy rat voice, because that is certainly the type of guy Brocklehurst is, and you will see that in short order. So Lady Mary, now tired of the tub life, readies herself for breakfast. Wait, rewind that. That is wrong. Mary's maids ready Mary for breakfast. We see Mary as a hoity-toity rich girl waited on hand and foot. All the maids are lined up to serve her various components for breakfast. Crichton stands over Mary, awaiting her verdict, while Tweenie admires her clothes. "The toast is spoiled. It's entirely too soft," Mary complains. Crichton offers her another piece before asking, "Are you sure, my lady, that the toast is the only thing that's spoiled?" Zing! She gets a bit flustered at this, and Crichton plays it off like nothing ever happened. I mentioned Mr. Belvedere earlier before, but it is snide comments and zingers like this that really bring out the similarities in the two. Comparisons are odious and sometimes dangerous, the film tells us, as we see Crichton thinking about Tweenie's carefree but messy eating of toast in comparison to Mary's snooty eating of her breakfast. Next, we head into the literary portion of this film, and technically this will be the first of a handful of literary bits to happen throughout the film, culminating in an amazing dream sequence yet to come. We read, "The love of learning in sequestered nooks and all the sweet serenity of books make high and low and king and peasant kin." This quote comes to us as Crichton and Tweeny are working to clean up a bit in the gorgeous library of the Loam House. Crichton pulls out a book entitled Poems, Volume 2, by William Ernest Henley. He flips it open and comes to a poem and starts to read it as Tweeny fawns over the erudite butler. He reads, "Or ever the knightly years were gone, with the old world to the grave, I was a king in Babylon, and you were a Christian slave." Tweeny takes umbrage at that last bit. "I wouldn't be no one's slave. I wouldn't." Crichton chuckles as Tweeny adds, "Unless I was your slave." Simon Luvish takes us deeper into the use of this poem in this film. He writes, "This idea of reincarnation, which will spark the film's central flashback sequence, appears as if it has been inserted by DeMille and McPherson in keeping with their continual obsession with this theme. But in fact, the poem is present in Barrie's play and fuels Crichton's transformation on the island into the same dominating personality that Lord Loams believes cannot exist in the proper state of nature. Mary soon makes her way into the library looking for that second volume of Henley's poems. She asks her sister and Ernie before turning to Crichton in the library. She walks in on Crichton's impromptu reading for Tweeny. She tells the butler what she is looking for, and he hands the book over. She sees it on the page talking about the Babylonian. She looks at him and laughs, saying, "I had no idea, Crichton, that you were interested in ancient Babylonian kings." Mary laughs it off, which gets Tweeny fuming at the disrespect being shown to her cute, lovable Crichton. We cut to our formal introduction to little Lord Brocklehurst now when we read, "But there is one who, though knowing little of Babylonian kings, is extensively informed on certain queens in the Cleopatra ballet, Lord Brocklehurst, played here by Robert Kane. You know he's going to be a slime ball when he lustily looks at a maid walking by as he makes his way to Mary, his dear Mary." He takes the book from her hand and returns it to Crichton. They walk off. "Him and her are keeping company, ain't they?" Tweeny asks. Let's rewind a second and look a little closer at that maid Brocklehurst was ogling. She was played by Hollywood legend Bebe Daniels. This appearance, though not a first appearance for Bebe, it was still considerably early in her career, and in fact, it was a chance meeting in a restaurant that led to this very role. Our friend Cecil B. DeMille explains, "When I saw her one evening at dinner in a restaurant, it occurred to me that there might be more behind those big dark eyes and Cupid's bow mouth than a steady diet of comedy roles that had brought out. Then and there I asked Bebe Daniels if she wanted to work for me. More honorable than some in those cutthroat days, she said she could not because she was under contract to Hal Roach. More than a year later, however, she came to see me all dressed up in her mother's clothes to make her look mature enough for dramatic roles, and I gave her a small part in Male and Female." Back to the film action, Crichton follows them out. Mary tells Crichton to get Brocklehurst a whiskey and soda. Here you get some very subtle work from Thomas Meighan, as you see he may have some feelings for the lady. After all, of what concern should it be to a humble butler that a great lord and a great lady are soon to wed, he says. Brocklehurst gives her the ring and proposes as Crichton returns to see what has happened. And a little bit of him dies in that moment, now serving a beverage to Brocklehurst. It is now tea time. This time of confidences brings Lady Eileen Duncraigie and her tangled love affairs to her best friend Mary for advice. We learn that Lady Eileen has a bit of scandal going on around her. She is madly in love with her chauffeur. Crichton realizes this as he saw them earlier holding hands for just a brief moment. Eileen has interrupted the planning of a big family yacht trip to the South Seas. Eileen wants to join, but she can't leave her secretly beloved driver. In fact, it is crisis time, and Eileen speaks to Mary in private. Eileen tells a hypothetical, air quotes, hypothetical story about a rich girl who is in love with her chauffeur. Whatever will she do? Is this a relationship that can survive? Not if you listen to Mary. Would you put a jackdaw and a bird of paradise in the same cage? Mary asks her friend. It's kind to kind, Eileen, and you and I can never change it. Eileen is heartbroken to hear this news from her bestie. Eileen leaves Mary by saying, "Frown all you want, Mary, but there's one thing you can't frown down, and that is love." This annoys Mary, who in turn takes out her anger on Crichton. But being the sensible man he is, Crichton replies, One cannot tell what may be in a man, my lady. If all were to return to nature tomorrow, the same man might not be master, nor the same man servant. Nature would decide the matter for us. Swiftly glides the bonny boat, just parted from the shore. Ah, tell me how my laddie fares, whom I may see no more. But possibly ignorance on this subject in Lady Mary's case is bliss. The Loam family, Cousin Ernest Woolley included, along with Tweeny and Crichton, are now shipping off. Brocklehurst waves them from shore. Whilst on the boat, Lady Mary sees a headline in the newspaper about Lady Eileen marrying her driver. Her and Ernest are shocked, and I'm sure if they had pearls on, they would surely be clutched. Mary exclaims, "This whole affair is ridiculous. It's exactly as if I were to marry Crichton." And there it might have ended, the film tells us, had they not been blown by the winds of chance into uncharted tropic seas, with destiny unsmiling at the wheel. The yacht is sailing blissfully along the ocean, the gang no doubt listening to the 1919 equivalent of Christopher Cross and Michael McDonald. Papa Loam is living the yacht rock lifestyle, sitting on a reclining chair on deck, stogie in hand. The Earl of Loam is the epitome of smooth in this moment, and he is wearing a captain's hat, possibly my favorite piece of clothing. Below deck is Mary, her sister, and the rest of the gang. They are trying to play music, but I can't imagine it's any good, especially considering the look Mary gives them. Heading back to the deck, we see a heartbroken Tweeny confiding in the actual captain. "I shipped as lady's maid to be near Crichton, and he ain't even looked at me since I've been aboard the boat." He tries to console the girl, only to neglect the wheel. As this happens up top, Mary reads about the bit from the book about being a king in Babylon and you are a Christian slave. This seems to be a theme throughout the movie. Remember how I said the captain was neglecting the wheel? Well, he neglects it right into a huge rock, which tears a monster hole in the side of the ship. The whole yacht is rocked from stem to stern. That's boat lingo, right? Regardless, Crichton steps up in a time of crisis, getting Tweeny onto the lifeboat. The rest of the Loams make their way into the lifeboat. That is, all except Mary, who is still trapped below deck. Crichton says he won't leave until he finds Mary. The butler leaves as the lifeboats take float. By now, the boat is caught on the huge rock it wrecked into. Mary is doing everything she can to survive and fight her way out, but there's nothing she can do as the water continues to rush in. Mary eventually makes her way out of the gaping hole in the side of the yacht. Crichton sees her struggling in the harsh currents and dives in to save her. He carries her from a rock formation on the nearby shore of a deserted island. Once there, they are reunited with Tweeny and the Loams. Now let's look a little deeper at the rescue of Mary as portrayed by Gloria Swanson. She was quite a trooper throughout filming of this picture, and she certainly earned the respect of her director and co-stars. Lawrence Quirk, in his book The Films of Gloria Swanson, explains, "She endured some tough location scenes, weathering a pounding surf in a drenched gown and hauling herself over slippery rocks. When her knees were found to be bloodied, she went on with the scene anyway." DeMille expressed his admiration for her tenacity and professionalism by calling her young fellow, and the designation stuck with her all through the film. Back to the film, Crichton comes out of nowhere carrying Mary to the others. The film tells us suddenly, like mists melting before the sun, she was no longer a great lady to him, but just a woman, a very helpless and beautiful woman. The family is ecstatic to see Mary, brushing the heroic Crichton aside. Tweeny, though, is incredibly happy to see Crichton again, safe and sound. Amidst all of this celebrating, they realize that father is missing. This leads to some comedic bits of Lord Loam eventually making it to shore and trekking around the coastline a bit before rejoining our story, to the cheers of his family. These are some fun bits, including a reenactment of some Swiss Family Robinson type action. Just because everyone is safe on land does not mean the dangers are gone. Due to some potential feline danger in the cave, Crichton instinctively protects Mary, leaving Tweeny alone. Despite this, Tweeny approaches Crichton in an effort to dry and warm him up. It's incredibly sweet and makes me fall for Lile Lee every time I watch it. Never fails. Habit, we are told by the film, the strongest element in human nature, refuses to be jolted, and the Loam household, used to being called when its perfumed bath is ready, has not yet learned that nature's alarm clock is the rising sun. It is the next day, and Crichton starts to take control of the situation. He goes to the wreck to see what can be salvaged after ordering the others to go down to the rocks and get some mussels. Being the rich wuss he is, Wooly refuses and tries to go back to sleep, but Crichton ain't having it. Being the man of action he is, Crichton is tearing up the yacht for anything usable towards survival. And he is very manly about it, just walking along a half-sunk boat, literally tearing it apart. Pretty cool stuff. But back at the rocks, Tweenie is doing exactly as she was ordered, getting the freshest mussels she can find. Loaded with plunder, Crichton makes his way back to the home cave. While walking along the coastline, arms crazy full, he comes across that second volume of poems by William Ernest Henley from earlier. He picks it up and continues back. We return to said camp to see Mary, Agatha, and Wooly again, acting like children, unaware of the dangers that await them. Ernest Wooly, in fact, is trying to press his suit with a rock in order to look his best. They look across the beach and see that Crichton and Tweenie have set up quite a little space, already making use of what was brought from the wreckage. We see Crichton is quite the scout, able to use the crystal from a watch to start a fire. This is all pretty impressive stuff. Now, Wooly, being the complete idiot and nincompoop that he is, only sees the gift of life-saving fire as a means to light his last damp cigarette. Not only does he use this fire to light his lung dart, but he tells Crichton to get to work preparing breakfast. Crichton answers by telling Wooly to take a pail and fetch some water. The guy is appalled at this request and throws the pail down. You know, Crichton, carrying water somehow always makes me turn pale. Good, isn't it? Pale, pale. You get it? That Wooly is quite the jokester, but again, Crichton wants to hear none of it. Tweenie, I'm going to the brook with Mr. Ernest. Don't leave the fire. What do you find folks out there think will happen with this fire? Do you think she'll leave? Will she stay? I think you know what's going to happen. It's a movie. We cut over to Lady Mary, who is fussing with her hair, but can't get it to cooperate. She summons a resourceful Tweenie over, who uses a shell as a makeshift hairpin. While the hair-raising, fire-neglecting action is going on, Crichton and Wooly head out to get water, but Ernest, again, acts like a pompous buffoon. Because of that, Crichton dunks old Ernie. Tweenie lets out a hearty laugh, but stops when Mary glares at her. Crichton returns to see the unattended fire has now gone out. He gives Mary a stern talking to for calling Tweenie away from the fire. Mary fires back that it is she that pays Tweenie's salary, not Crichton. The butler orders his co-worker back to the fire despite Mary and Agatha's protestations and pretentiousness. My lady, Crichton angrily replies, all of us may spend the remainder of our lives on this island. The only coin that any one of us will be paid in will be service. Those who are not willing to serve are apt to find themselves both cold and hungry. Lady Mary, not reading the room very well, fires back, do I understand you to mean if my sister and I do not work, there will be no dinner for us? Needless to say, Mary will find out the hard way that Crichton means business. But first, Father Loam takes umbrage at how the pecking order is starting to turn. Crichton, the question of leadership on this island must be settled once and for all. I, who was born a peer, must naturally take the lead. This gets the kids excited. Unfortunately, Crichton is undeterred. He rebuffs this claim and asks Lady Mary for the gold lace trimming from her dress. It'll make an excellent fishnet. Mary scoffs at the request and says no dice. Loam demands Crichton apologize or take a month's notice. The whole family is feeling insulted by their butler's behavior. If Crichton won't leave them, they decide they'll leave him. Mary orders Tweenie to follow. She doesn't want to, but hugs Crichton before following her lady. It's one thing to be a peer in England, but another to be a peer in the jungle. To shoot the desert island scenes, cast and crew traveled to Santa Cruz Island off the coast of Santa Barbara, where they faced some harrowing moments. We read from Margarita Landazuri in an essay for silentfilm.org. She continues, during a scene aboard the wrecked yacht, co-star Thomas Meighan nearly drowned, and Swanson suffered scratched and bloody knees and hands, which she endured without complaining. DeMille admiringly began calling her young fellow as if she were one of the boys. If you were reading the Santa Barbara daily newspapers in 1919, you would have gotten that inside scoop to the cinematic happenings on Santa Cruz Island. The May 19, 1919 edition of the newspaper reads, "The beach at Fry's Harbor, one of the most beautiful of the miniature harbors of Santa Cruz Island, is now being transformed into a tropical beach by the Lasky Motion Picture Company. Palm trees, bamboo, luxurious vegetation of all kinds has been brought there and is being transplanted to give the beach every appearance of a cannibal isle, which will figure prominently in a picture now being produced by the Lasky Company. Cecil B. DeMille's company will spend 3 weeks at the harbor as soon as the work is completed, making scenes for the picture on which they are now working." Turning back to the film, some time has passed and we catch up with Mary and Agatha in a little grass awning. A particularly weak-looking shack with Loam and Woolley trying to add to it before it ultimately collapses on the women. Crichton, across the way, however, in an incredibly strong and sturdy hut, looks on and laughs. This will serve as the plot going forward. Crichton is, to use a Gilligan's Island reference, a mix of the professor and the skipper. He's super smart and able to apply that knowledge to survival. It's one thing to know to be brave when the sun is gaily shining, but quite another to be brave in the dark, we are told. At this point, Crichton is killing it with a roaring fire as the others sit in damp, dark cold of night. Eventually, they see the error of their ways and apologize to Crichton in order to get some of that sweet, sweet heat. Well, not everyone. Mary is the lone holdout. She will not admit the butler is better than her. "I'm just as hungry as you are," she says, "but I don't find humble pie an interesting diet. I'd starve first." So we start to see at this point in the film the balance of power on the island is starting to change. It's starting to shift. And Mary, alone and scared in the jungle, finally gives in and runs to Crichton's fire, tail firmly between legs. Crichton pours her a bowl of soup he made as we flash back to the last time he served her food. As an act of contrition, she offers a piece of clothing, that gold trim that Crichton had wanted earlier to use to make a fishing net. Under the whiplash of necessity, they come in time to find that the wilderness is cruel only to the drone, that her grassy slopes may clothe the ragged, her wild boar feed the hungry, her wild goats fill the thirsty. In short, that abundant nature waits to serve mankind. I live for intertitles like that. It's so poetic and beautiful, and McPherson and DeMille dole them out in this film in good measure. To be honest, it took a few reads to even understand what was being said. I may be dumb, or it may have been tricky, but either way, it took me a few readings, but that happens a fair amount to me throughout DeMille pictures. I'm a little slow on the uptake, but I really do appreciate the beautiful prose that is put on the screen before us. This, like many a DeMille and McPherson film before, is wordy. Many of the intertitles could be easily mistaken for pages from a novel. In fact, male and female may have a higher word count than this episode's script. Either way, it's going to be close. That previous mini-novel is used to tell us how life has changed. Time has passed and the group has created a full-on island community. They are now professional hunters and gatherers, and we see that play out before our very eyes. Crichton even shares a close moment with Mary, teaching her how to use a bow and arrow. As they live their best stranded life, we turn back to England and see that when the cat's away, the mouse has an extraordinary method of mourning. First, we get a letter to Brocklehurst that reads, "My lord, I am directed to inform you with deep regret that the expedition dispatched in search of Lord Loam and party has returned without having succeeded in its object." With this knowledge, Brocklehurst, being the weasel he is, starts hitting on the remaining maid. Fast forward a bit, there is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood leads to fortune. And so the second anniversary of the wreck finds Crichton's kingship unchallenged, his incoming tide at the flood. In this fast-forwarded time, the group has created a whole society. They are all proficient hunters and farmers now. A whole housing plan now exists, and everyone contributes to the greater good. It's a pretty sweet setup with Crichton the undisputed king and leader. He is so much the leader that the others do the majority of the work while he relaxes and enjoys the fruits of their labors. The pendulum has officially swung to the other side. He calls the others in for a meeting. He has devised a system which will light a signal fire on a high cliff with the pull of a specially designed lever. This will hopefully be the contraption that gets them back home. Crichton is really channeling his inner professor during their island life. In the kitchen or the parlor or field with the clover, women are women the wide world over, we read. During this, we see a constant battle between Mary and Tweenie. They each try to one-up each other in an attempt to impress Crichton. They want the honor of cooking for him. They each push, nudge, and literally fight to be the first to give him something. They each try to be cuter, sexier, and more alluring than the other. It really is a battle. At this point in time, Crichton really has become that king in Babylon, while they are his Christian slaves. Despite the fighting between the women, Crichton chooses Mary to serve him his food, which breaks poor Tweenie's heart. Crichton has grown so powerful. He now separates himself from the others. He lives in his own private throne room of sorts, ruling from the privacy of his own large hut. A small comedy bit with Lord Loam ends with some missing figs that now Lord Emperor Crichton desired. This starts a panic as Tweenie explains to Mary that they now have no figs. Mary tells Tweenie to serve the dinner as is while she runs to the old ruins to get some more figs. When Tweenie tells Crichton about this turn of events, he is appalled. That is the drinking place of leopards, that ruins area. It has got a high danger level, and Crichton loads up bow and arrows to safely extricate Mary from what could potentially turn into a deadly situation. Meanwhile, Mary makes her way to the ruins post-haste. Unfortunately, the big spotted cats are there as well. At least one is, which still presents quite a threat. Crichton gets there just in time to shoot the leopard and save Mary. The two embrace over the fallen leopard. That wonderful look of fear in your eyes makes me almost forget England, Crichton tells her. Crichton lifts the predator over his shoulders. Sometimes, Crichton, Mary tells him, I can almost believe that you were a king in Babylon. To which he launches the poor leopard off his shoulders to the ground. If I was a king in Babylon, he replies, then you were the Christian slave. This bit with the leopard was one of a number of wild uses of animals in this film. In general, I like to believe that everyone involved is safe and the filming is safe and well planned out. But in the silent era, it was a bit of the wild, wild west, especially when it came to safety for both human and animal. Simon Luvish writes, one crucial scene has Crichton shooting a leopard to save Lady Mary, then returning to camp with the slain beast draped over his shoulder. DeMille had the animal drenched in chloroform for the scene, only to find his actor panicking when it began purring in his ear. So with the animal danger behind us, we move into the famous Babylonian dream sequence of the film. This is a phenomenal scene that really encompasses everything I love about a Cecil B. DeMille picture. It's gaudy, it's glorious, it's so wildly over the top and comes seemingly out of nowhere. Any description I can give it will not do it justice. So just do yourself a favor, head to YouTube, head to wherever, and do yourself a favor and check this scene out. It is an incredible delight to see it. Visually, it is stunning. We are in the throne room of Crichton as the Babylonian king. Guards and, I believe, B.B. Daniels as another servant surround him. A procession of dancing girls and food minions approach. All bow before the king. Next, a Christian slave is brought before him. This is Gloria Swanson. She is thrown at his feet. He grabs her, only for her to fight back. He steps off his throne and approaches her. He grabs her and says, I'll tame thee. Never fear, my pretty snarling tiger cat. He pulls her to him and forcefully kisses her. I saw, I took, I cast you by, I bent and broke your pride, he explains. That last description really made it sound like a lot was going on, and there really is a lot to take in over the course of this few-minute-long flashback/dream sequence. We talked already about the scene's visuals, but let's look at the costumes. In his autobiography, DeMille would write, on Jeannie's word, I engaged Mitchell Leeson to design the lavish costumes for the Babylonian flashback scene. I feel sure that the superlative quality of Mitch's work may have been the one reason why Sir James Barrie neither exploded nor fainted when he saw the Babylonian embellishment added to his play. Though it all looked amazing, it was hard work looking so pretty and heavy, really heavy. Swanson would write, "2 maids had to help me carry it when I was not on the set. The gown was made entirely of pearls and white beads, and the towering headdress was made of white peacock feathers." Back to the film, time has passed, and Mary is now dressed to the Babylonian nines and is again brought before her king. Her final test. He explains the situation to the slave. "Choose thine own fate. Yield thou to me willingly, or thou shalt know the fitting cage we've built for thee, O tiger woman." She recoils in fear before he orders her to the cat cafe. The lion's den of death. As she heads to her doom, she replies, "Through lives and lives, thou shalt pay, O king." "Bring forth the sacred lions of Ishtar," he commands. Lions enter the arena as he sits on his throne. She makes her way into the den. I was able to count at least 6 or 7 lions roaming around as Mary cautiously makes her way in. King Crichton recoils in horror as he hears her screams. Back in the pen, a dead Mary lays on the concrete floor while a lion lays on her. Let me repeat that. A live, awake, moving, scary, terrifying, powerful lion lies on her. Gloria Swanson put up with quite a bit over the course of filming male and female. Nature certainly had it out for her, but things would only get sketchier. Landazuri writes, "But the Babylonian sequence in which she is thrown to the lions was a worse ordeal. The lion lunged at her during filming of the first part of the scene, and DeMille decided to scrap the entire sequence. Swanson, however, insisted on continuing. In the next scene, the petrified Swanson lay absolutely still as the lion put its paw on her back, with DeMille and several trainers stationed just off camera, whips and cocked pistols in hand. The scene was completed without mishap. That is another crazy, insane, wild use of real-life animals in ways that could go horribly, horribly wrong. To hear Gloria explain it, it really sends a chill down my easily scared spine." Gloria Swanson would write, "I could hear the lion breathing near me. They put a piece of canvas on my back to keep the lion's manicured claws from making the slightest scratch. Then they brought the lion up to me and put his paw on the canvas. Ever so slowly they pulled the canvas aside until I could feel the paw on my skin. Every hair on my head was standing on end. I could hear the camera grinding and the crack of the trainer's whip. Every cell in my body quivered when the animal roared. His hot breath seemed to go up and down my spine." Now in the film, the other slave woman takes a bloody garment and presents it to King Crichton. He weeps in it as we return to the modern day, the two still sitting amidst the ruins. Crichton opens up to Mary saying, "I know I've paid through lives and lives, but I loved you then and I love you now." And the two kiss deeply. So I guess if you're going to risk your life with a live killer lion on top of you, the least you could do is get a gem or two out of it. So in the aftermath of filming the lion scene, DeMille really appreciated that insane level of bravery and commitment that his leading lady showed. And we read from Simon Luvish, we read, "DeMille's reaction at the end of the scene was, according to Swanson, to sit her on his knee and offer her the choice of a velvet tray covered with brooches, rings, and necklaces, and a whole array of beautiful jewelry. She chose a delicate little gold mesh purse with a square sapphire in the center." From rewarding bravery back to the movie, after the making out between the two is finished, they return to the village where they announce they are getting married. Everyone is super happy except, of course, Tweenie. In fact, the maid is so heartbroken she spills her drink everywhere. And I love the performance of Lile Lee here. She shows so much subtlety and so much inner pain and turmoil that it really just broke my heart watching her heart be broken on screen. Now, as the wedding ceremony is commencing, with Lord Loam walking his daughter down a makeshift aisle. The ceremony is performed, but Tweenie can't bring herself to watch. Instead, she looks longingly out a nearby window. What she sees outside that window causes the wedding to stop dead in its tracks, just as the I do's were about to happen. It's a boat. Everyone goes crazy, and Crichton sets the plan in motion to light that signal fire he created earlier in the film. As this commotion is going on, Tweenie grabs Mary and tells her, "Do you know what this means, Mary? It means that he's coming back to me." Crichton overhears this and is instantly torn. If he hits the lever, they are saved, but he can no longer have Mary. If he ignores it, he gets Mary, but they may never go home again. Thomas Meighan runs the full gamut of emotions as Crichton makes this horrible choice. Mary tries to stop him from hitting that lever. He tells Mary, "It means that Babylon has fallen, Mary, and that Bill Crichton must play the game." And with that, he pulls the lever, and the signal fire roars to life. A rescue boat is soon sent out. Sailors help the shipwrecked crew begin the process of getting back to civilization. Crichton and Mary are still heartbroken knowing that everything is about to change again. And because the Loams are crappy rich people, they take all the credit for Crichton's ingenious devices and architecture. The real messed up thing is that he does it right in front of that admirable Crichton himself. And Crichton bows his head and acknowledges Mary again as her butler when he says, "My lady." "There is none to salute him now unless we do it," we read. The film now catches us up on all the post-island action. The screen reads, "So easily does human nature slip back into its accustomed groove that the Loams, once home, await as eagerly their perfumed bath as if they'd never bathed in jungle streams, eat their expensive meals as calmly as if they'd never begged for soup, give orders to their butlers as coolly as if in a forgotten yesterday they had not called him king." The Loams get really obnoxious about taking credit for all of Crichton's hard work. Crichton even downplays everything he did, saying he didn't even take meals with the family. Even as he serves Mary, there is an undeniable sexual tension and chemistry, but it is not a path that life can ever take for the two of them. In fact, Mary is resigned to becoming Miss Brocklehurst. This revelation puts a dagger in the heart of Crichton. And to further emphasize the fact that Crichton and Mary can never be together, we get an update on Mary's friend Eileen, who was in love, if you remember, with her chauffeur. She ended up being kicked out of her family, disowned, and without a dollar to her name. Her life, because of love, had been destroyed. What little chance Mary might have gone with Crichton is all but dead now. In fact, Crichton is against it to save Mary and her reputation. And to add insult to injury, Brocklehurst, the little sniveling rat that he is, offers a small cash reward to Crichton, who then denies it. This is where we get the union of Crichton and Tweenie, the couple that should have been all along. Crichton takes Tweenie's hand and approaches Mary. "It's about Tweenie and me. I wanted to speak, my lady. As soon as you can conveniently replace us, we are to be married and sail for America," he tells his one-time love. The three stand side by side, the only happy one being Tweenie. Mary wants him to stay, but it is her lot to be with Brocklehurst. She wishes them every happiness as they walk away, and Tweenie and Crichton embrace. "You may break, you may shatter the vase if you will, but the scent of the roses will hang around still. So does a great sacrifice shed its fragrance over a lifetime, long after the flower of love is gone." The film ends with scenes of an unmarried Mary sitting in her garden with Brocklehurst. Her one-time fiancé pipes up, "I understand, my dear, why you postponed our marriage. You loved Crichton, the admirable Crichton. But since I'll still be waiting for you at the Judgment Day, don't you think you might reconsider?" Mary stares off into space, clearly unhappy. We then hop over to the States and see Crichton and Tweenie living their best life on the frontier, living, laughing, and loving, as the film fades out and comes to an end. Now that ending, whilst good, is quite a bit different from the play J.M. Barrie had written. Simon Luvish writes, "In Barrie's play, he, Crichton, replies to Lady Mary's claim that you are the best man among us on an island perhaps, but in England, no. Then there's something wrong with England, says Lady Mary, but Crichton rebukes her. My lady, not even from you can I listen to a word against England. The servant, as ever, remains the best guarantor of the persistence of power." Now, as I mentioned before, the more I watch Cecil B. DeMille films, the more I fall in love with them. It's tough to really pinpoint why. I just watch these films with a smile on my face. I've come to the realization that DeMille pictures are cinematic comfort food to me. Even when they have not been so great, there's always something that piques my interest, whether it's visuals, or the action itself, or the writing, any number of things. I always absolutely love them. And the silent film era of Cecil B. DeMille is really remarkable and shows the path the director would take as talkies took hold of the world's movie houses. Like Alfred Hitchcock's silent run, you can see the earliest influences, predilections, and ideas that would reach their full potential when DeMille directed his numerous sound classics. So let's talk about my feelings of the film. Obviously, I love the film, but in a little bit of a break to what is going to be a love fest, I have to start with some negatives. The title, as I talked about earlier, is absolutely horrible. That's really all I can say about it. Let me rephrase that. It's boring, which makes it horrible. It's about as generic of a movie title as it can be. So incredibly forgettable. Earlier in the episode, we discussed the reasons for the name change, which seem pretty ridiculous, but it is what it is. Let's say a name change was hypothetically incredibly totally necessary. Fine. But the powers that be didn't have to select such a generic name. For a movie that is so fun, unexpected, and full of twists about human nature, surely someone could have thought of something a little bit better. Listening to DeMille talk about the change, I understand it, but me and Cecil will have to agree to disagree on this point. On top of all that, male and female makes my internet research way more interesting than it needs to be. Just typing the words male, female, and movie into Google leads to some rather risque corners of the interweb. So thank you, Cecil B. DeMille, for making my internet history a little weirder than it needed to be. So there's that. While this is ostensibly a Gloria Swanson episode, I have to give the highest of kudos to Thomas Meighan as the admirable Crichton of the film. His performance was fantastic and really covered a lot of emotional ground. From the moment he appeared on screen, butlering it up, I was invested. He really showed so much character, even though his character was super subdued and buttoned down. With just an expression or movement of his body, he really told a story. Seeing Crichton's growth as the picture progressed was fantastic and showed what a talent Meighan was. He is completely believable as the butler, but also super believable as a king on the deserted island. And like other DeMille films, his chemistry with Gloria Swanson was off the charts. They really had something special, and I am glad it exists right now for us to watch and enjoy to this day. The versatility of Gloria Swanson is also worth mentioning here. Though I've not seen every film of hers, what I have seen has covered a range of characters. Heck, even in this film, she takes Lady Mary Lazenby through a whole host of levels. From rich ennui to island-hardened to lovelorn, her performance, like male and female as a whole, was a wild ride. I am not alone in my praise for the film either, and the actresses and actors who brought it and the characters to life. In the December 31st, 1918 edition of Variety, we read, "The result on the screen shows that there was no stinting on money. The cast is a pippin, and Thomas Meighan does good work. Gloria Swanson and Lile Lee divide the women honors of the piece. Swanson plays the role of Lady Mary, while Lee is the little slavey Tweenie. The former appears to advantage in both the London and the desert island scenes, looking beautiful at all times, and especially so as she slips into the sunken bath, while little Lee displays an artistry that is far greater than she showed in any of her previous productions. Bebe Daniels is also in the cast for a small bit in one of the Babylonian scenes and certainly is good to look upon." That quote also brings up another name for the Golden Silent Films podcast must mention per our founding charter. That would be the always intriguing Lile Lee. She's a favorite here at the podcast home office, and this role is exactly why. No matter what role she takes, she excels and adds so very much to any film she is in. I couldn't help but fall in love with Tweenie as the story progressed. She is so stinking charming, and the way that Teenie wears her emotions on her sleeve is so incredibly endearing. I was rooting for Tweenie the whole movie to finally hook up with her beloved butler, only I ended up getting heartbroken as well when Crichton and Mary make their ill-fated matrimonial announcement. There's something about her performances that are so incredibly genuine and realistic. Seeing her looks and expressions and how they tell a whole story in and of themselves is crazy good acting and woos us every single time. Overall, this was a great film. I can tie that back to my growing love of Cecil B. DeMille and what he puts on the screen. Just visuals alone, this, like many of his flicks, is beautiful to look at. From sets to costumes to the otherworldly Babylon scenes, he paints amazing pictures. And it's not just the main on-screen elements. I appreciate his eye for detail so much. Extravagance and opulence are ordinary to DeMille, and he really heightens the scene by adding those small details, especially when those scenes take place in or around a bathtub. Of course, the Babylonian sequence gets a lot of attention in this movie. While it was never part of the original play, I think it was expertly crafted and added to this cinematic story. It takes what was already a big movie and adds a whole other level of scale. It's super impressive to watch, and the character work within it was really cool to see as well. Now, I'm not the only one to see this film as worthy of praise. Turning back to the Variety review from December of 1918, we read, Cecil B. DeMille's picturization of J.M. Barrie's play The Admirable Crichton is impressive. The production places DeMille on par with D.W. Griffith as far as Babylonian stuff is concerned, and there are several scenes where DeMille steps a little beyond the great Griff. That is high praise for a filmmaker like DeMille, who is really only just hitting his stride at this point in his career. This film deserves all of its laurels, and we love being able to spread the word of male and female. One thing I joke about with DeMille pictures is their wordiness. The intertitles have a tendency to be a bit busy. Sometimes watching a DeMille silent film is akin to reading a novel. That does have its pros and cons for sure. Jeannie McPherson, various backstage behaviors aside, is a fantastic writer. She really delves into deep ideas and concepts and adds a certain gravitas to any film to which she contributes. The intertitles are all really poetic. While there may be a lot of them, they really set the mood for what DeMille is aiming for. Even though I like to mock their verbose nature from time to time, I wouldn't have it any other way. Just like his visuals can contain so much detailed minutia, the intertitles often do the same. It's a DeMille picture through and through. It just requires a fair amount of reading, that's all. In a quasi-negative comment, the December 17, 1918 issue of Photoplay magazine, they chime in by writing, "It is a typical DeMille production, audacious, glittering, intriguing, superlatively elegant, and quite without heart. It reminds me of one of our great California flowers, glowing with all the colors of the rainbow and devoid of fragrance." The always awesome silent film website Movies Silently sees some wrongs with the film and how it all plays out, but it is not necessarily a reflection on DeMille. Their review reads, "The flaws of the film are the flaws of the play in this case. Barrie had a great hook, but he didn't seem to know what to do with it, so the status quo is restored, and other than some slight awkwardness within the household, nothing really changes. And there's no commentary on the invincibility of class barriers either. Everyone just kind of goes home. Not every film requires earth-shattering changes, of course, but when you bite off something as big as class hierarchy, you need to be prepared for a little chewing." Male and Female would be released on November 16, 1919. This was a great movie quality-wise, and that magic translated from the screen to the box office, and luckily for us, Simon Luvish breaks down the numbers when he writes, "Male and Female became the first DeMille movie to gross over $1 million. At a cost of over $180,000, it was Cecil's second most expensive movie after Joan the Woman, but it was Paramount's most successful release to date. In this incredibly long episode, which we appreciate you for sticking with us, we have already introduced you to quite a group of talent, both on screen and off. Before we start to wrap things up, there is a little bit of fun history of another, at the time, lesser-known member of the film's crew. It wouldn't be until years later that director Cecil B. DeMille finally realized who he had on his team for Male and Female. In his autobiography, DeMille would write, "Of course, the director general could not individually know every one of the hundreds of people who work on a production. It was not until nearly 40 years later that I learned the identity of a youngster who was earning some $12 a week doing advertising sketches for Male and Female. I remembered how good the sketches were. They should have been good, for they were among the first work done in Hollywood by one of Hollywood's very few authentically creative geniuses, Walt Disney." So we've told you a great story, a lot of background, a lot of biography, but now it is time to find out where your favorite silent stars are laid to rest. This is the segment where we join our favorite cinematic stars on the other side of the cemetery gates, the history, the art, the celebrity spectacle converge in Where Are They Now? Your guide to paying your respects to the actresses that have entertained us so very much. Gloria Swanson passed away of heart issues at New York Hospital on April 4th, 1983. She was 84 years old. Swanson had lived a long and successful life both on and off screen. In the years post-silent era, she would star in scores of films and television series. She was never idle for too long. She would even have a television talk show in the late 40s. She really was a multi-talented star who lived life on her own terms, though she could run into controversy from time to time. One of her most memorable roles came in 1950 after a nearly 16-year absence from the silver screen. Sunset Boulevard was the film's name, and Swanson played the incredibly historic, iconic role of Norma Desmond, a reclusive silent film star seeking a big comeback. This role would nab Swanson several awards, though she couldn't snag that coveted Oscar. This is such a great film that could only have worked with Gloria Swanson in the role of the has-been actress. Knowing her life story and Hollywood heritage really brings in a ton of added subtext. And add into seeing her and Cecil B. DeMille together on screen is truly a special sight. In just their few minutes of shared screen time, you can really feel the connection they had from that era of the silence. I first saw Sunset Boulevard years and years ago. I can't remember exactly the number, but when I first watched it, I was completely unaware of the history and the real-world relationships that really inform the backstory and lore of the film. Now, rewatching it now, knowing what I know, really made Sunset Boulevard a much more fascinating and profound cinematic experience. It really is an all-timer that really adds a little cherry on top to that Swanson-DeMille connection in an incredibly creative and cinematic manner. According to her obit, appearing in the April 5th, 1983 edition of the New York Times, in later years, Miss Swanson became known as a health food advocate. Espousing proper diet and natural, unsprayed foods, she campaigned against additives, overindulgence in sugar, and the harmful effects on food of polluted air, soil, and water. The actress had entered the hospital 2 weeks prior, suffering from what friends said was a mild heart attack. She had returned to the States from her home in the Portuguese Riviera. Her body was cremated and her ashes interred at the Church of the Heavenly Rest on Fifth Avenue in New York City, attended by a small number of family members. Offering a clue to her vitality and youthfulness, the New York Times would report, Miss Swanson remarked, "If I had my life to live over again, I wouldn't. Life is a privilege. Mistakes should be dropped in the wastebasket. No, I'm not much for the past. I'm concerned about tomorrow and what's going on between dreams." With land in sight and our survival all but assured for now, we want to thank you for spending this island getaway with us. It's been so much fun following the adventures of Gloria Swanson and Thomas Meighan on both sea and land. Did you enjoy this yacht cruise gone horribly wrong? What are your favorite Gloria Swanson films? Have you learned to respect your butlers and maids a little more? Have you been shipwrecked? Tell us your story. And just a little spoiler alert, the shipwrecking will continue later on this season. Let us know your sordid adventures in international waters and more at the various social media spots of the Golden Silent Films podcast. On that note, if you have forgotten, we are on Instagram, Bluesky, and Twitter. Let us know what you think of this episode. What silent and silent-related movies, past or present, do you want us to look at next? Our world of silent movie knowledge and experience is constantly expanding, and we can always use your input for our future episodes here and beyond. You can always find us on Golden Silence Cast on Instagram and Bluesky, and at Golden Silence 1 on Twitter, and now on YouTube. And again, if you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or any other podcast outlet that allows it, subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching it on YouTube, like, subscribe, and comment. It does a lot for our visibility, and we love hearing your thoughts and ideas. We really, really appreciate all of your incredible support, and seeing how much you find folks are listening makes us want to make bigger, better, and more epic episodes. So, with all of that being said, thank you to all of you fine listeners for all of your fine listening. And don't forget, as always, the silents are golden and the talkies, they're just a fad. And the next time we take to the water, it's going to be a 3-hour tour, I think. Or ever the knightly years were gone, with the old world to the grave, I was a king in Babylon, and you were a Christian slave.